On this episode of the John 1911 podcast, the store is a success. Our rifle range is open. The B-21 Raider and the grotto is gone. Okay, welcome back, everybody. This is episode 281 of the John 1911 podcast. This is going to be a solo episode. Today, let me look at the watch here. It is about 20 after 1 on Monday, December 5th. So, if anything comes up, in the news that we don't cover on this episode, it's because we were recording. So, keep that in mind. We are time sensitive to some things. So, since this is going to be a solo episode, it's a good chance to kind of catch up on a couple of things and, cover some topics I think are of interest to some people. So, I guess the first thing I want to mention is don't forget, if you have any podcast feedback, we do have a dedicated podcast email address, and that is podcast@john1911.com. So podcast@john1911. So pretty easy to remember, all one word. And I guess the biggest thing to start off with is officially the store is open, the John 1911 store that I've talked about here on pod and on the website officially. And it's a second website, so you can go to John 1911, go to the menus. I realize on a mobile device, the menus may not be as intuitive as maybe, say, on a computer or an iPad or a tablet up at the top of the screen. But if you click the menu, if you find the menu area on your iPhone or your Android phone, you'll see, you can do categories and whatever. And there's a little tab in there called Store. That tab has been there forever, just hasn't been populated. You click that, opens up another window, which takes you to a different website called john1911armory.com. And that's where you can find, things we're going to be selling and merchandising and going forward. So obviously many of you have found that because the mugs that we created are gone, the John 1911 Arctic tumblers. They went fairly quickly. We had it kind of came in two waves. We had a wave when we first announced them, and then I think that was on, it was like a Monday or Tuesday, and then I guess when the newsletter went out, the second newsletter of the week went out on the following Saturday before noon that Saturday, the rest of them were gone. So like there weren't hundreds of them. We just, we had ordered some of these mugs really for staff and also as something that we could test, products, sell, and pretty easy to ship, known quantities and all that. So those of you that bought them and took a chance on trying out the store, thank you, and I hope you enjoy the mugs. We've gotten some feedback on them and some cool photographs. If you have any cool photographs of you using the John 1911 travel, I think technically it's a, what is it called? I call them coffee cups, but they're travel tumblers. Is that right? Travel, what? They have a handle on them or whatever. So send us pictures. Like to see them. Maybe we'll publish them on our social media. And I will have to check the shipping. We ship everything tracked. You had two options. You could do priority mail, or you could do standard, I think, USPS ground, but with tracking. And so I'll have to see. I know a bunch of you guys who were far away from the armory here in Ohio. We're probably going to get your mugs on the second tranche, get them on this past Saturday. And so I'll have to check and see, but as of right now, nothing's been lost or delayed or stolen or is unaccounted for. And as far as I can tell, no one's been charged $35 million as opposed to $35 for the mug. So, which is really the big concern, that kind of stuff, the back end stuff. Things go wrong. That's why it's a test. At the end of the day, it's a coffee mug. If it gets lost, I can refund it. We can write off a lost coffee mug. Something goes wrong with charge, we can eat it. You know what I mean? It's not a big deal. That's kind of why we did it. So, in further news, I have started to publish some of the content and videos that we're doing covering the aftermarket Blaser Tactical 2 barrels. We've been kind of holding some of that back because other things kind of were in front of it, and we're working on it. So the public release of the function test was done yesterday, and as you can see, nothing went crazy with the barrels. Nothing went there are no pressure issues, no feeding issues, no extraction issues, no head spacing issues that we can tell, no really tight chambers causing a pressure spike or flat primers. And so we'll have more coming on that. I'm gonna warn some of you. I've had some of you reach out about the Blaser barrels, and there are some things with the barrels that I think need to be kind of cleaned up a little bit. Nothing catastrophic, but I think it needs to be cleaned up. And so we're not advising right now. Like we have a guy, who you are, you probably listen to the podcast. I don't know that you do, but reached out for an organization, was like, hey, will this accept X, Y, Z, or 1, 2, and 3? We want to place a big order. And I'm like, whoa, hold on now. I don't think you should be placing some kind of, OPM order, other people's money order for this product just yet. They're still trying to work out some of the kinks. It's minor stuff. But the thing is, not that we're not gear reviewers. However, I'm the only Blaser enthusiast around here, and I have become the de facto Blaser guinea pig whisperer, test monkey. And so better let me to take it up to ask than you take it up to ask. So just hold on. We're still working on some stuff. It's coming. This is good news. Couple little things, we can address. That's all I'm going to say right now. And, kind of go from there. Kind of also along these lines, the rifle range is fully functional again. You noticed on the website that, we've cleaned up the range. We cleaned up, re-graveled the pits, re-graveled the range. Since the last podcast, we have reopened the rifle range for regular operations. Reconfigured kind of how some of the stuff is. Like we had, like furniture, shooting benches, picnic benches, and that kind of stuff. We're moving some of that stuff around, decluttering some stuff. Also pulling all of the old stuff that is basically rotted away or is in a process of rotting, and we're making a giant burn pile. We're just waiting for the red flags to stop, for the wind to settle down and the things to get a little bit more wet. Then we're gonna have a giant bonfire out there at the John 1911 range. So, but the rifle range is fully operational, and now we're going to be making some changes or upgrades to it. For those of you, because I've tried not to talk about tractors or tractoring because, we kind of got pretty tractor heavy over the summer talking about tractors. But we bought this product that, there's a bush hog on the back of a tractor, a rotary cutter on the back of a tractor, and we bought a product that goes onto the front of the tractor. It's on the front end loader. It's a bush hog that goes up in the air. Essentially, I call it's a brush cutter, rotary cutter that goes up on the front end loader. And this one is from a company called Lane Shark. And we, without getting into too much boring detail, I was kind of, we were going to use the Lane Shark. We are using the Lane Shark for trail maintenance, the cut back things that grow in, rifle shooting lane maintenance, trail maintenance, that kind of stuff, like up on the vertical as opposed to down on the ground. And what's become very clear and apparent, and maybe it's a reflection of the size of the tractor we have, which is fairly large. This Lane Shark is pretty heavy duty. We have been using it in conjunction with the real triple bladed spindle, whatever, bush hog. We're opening up the wooded area behind the main shooting position. So if you ever see content or videos for the John 1911 range, and there's the picnic shelter thing that we can sit under and shoot under if we want, I've let stuff behind that grow too much, trees, and I think they're they call that cedar trees, and they're nasty. But that's causing too many ticks. And it really got bad this past year, so we're going to go ahead and knock all that down, push all that back, and basically reopen that to make it more of a, grassy area, or at least to keep it cut back so we don't have ticks dropping on us from trees or whatever. But that Lane Shark, if you're someone that needs a Lane Shark and you have a tractor that can accommodate it, I say go for it. We've been very impressed with the Lane Shark. We did have some problems initially, but that really It wasn't really Lane Shark's fault. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't John 911's fault. We just, they had a few there was a part in it that never worked. And then, a hydraulic line got damaged, operating it on our tractor. So, but I'm not that we're going to be we're tractor reviewers or attachment reviewers, but the reality is, we, just like how we have to document stuff around here for staff, like how to do this, how to do that, how to open this, how to unlock that, how to take this gun apart, how to crack it open, how to do whatever. We're probably, I would imagine, in the spring, going to start doing a series of videos, again, for in-house consumption, but we're going to put them up publicly, how to do things with the tractor, how to check the fluids on the tractor, how to check hydraulic fluid, add stuff, how to connect, disconnect stuff, how the four-wheel drive, the diff lock, and, the transmission works, high-low, kind of moving around. If you have to take the tractor down to the gas station to get gas, how to operate the tractor on the roads at speed versus, operating it in the fields. That was a lesson that I had learned and accidentally reprogrammed the transmission, wasn't good. So, but, the Lane Shark tractor stuff, there's still some things going on with the rifle range kind of in the background, but it is operating. We are opening up some more targets for the rifle range, and probably going to be ordering some more small targets from Superior Ideas down there in Florida. They have no idea. And actually, it's going to be small, very challenging targets in various places, because we obviously need to up the game as far as the difficulty for the precision rifle guys for precision rifle shooting. So, also, I guess I'll go ahead and say this too. We had somebody reach out to us on a YouTube, must have been on YouTube, looking for parts for a shotgun, it's a SPAS 12 shotgun. And if you're a regular or you're a high level gun person or a big time gun guy, you may or may not be aware of this, but there's a certain class of firearm. I'd call it a lower priced firearm or a lower tiered firearm, or maybe like these, maybe it's a gun that's famous in Hollywood that isn't really respected in the firearm circles, but, kids, I call them kids. I mean, I'm 51, so anyone under the age of 30 is a kid to me. Kids will get these guns and they, whether it's a Mac 10 or a Tech 9 or a SPAS 12 or, I don't know, like any of these, Desert Eagle, like there's another one, these cultural touchstone guns that are actually dog shit guns, generally speaking. And so whenever we have content that crosses over to that demographic out there, we will start getting questions from those people who may not, they're like, hey, how do I get X, Y, or Z or parts or springs for this gun? Because they see we have one, they see it runs, and, typically these guns, they buy them, they're cheap, and they don't run. So I got to figure out a way to try to educate the listener or the viewer on videos that if you have any questions about a firearm or something that you're seeing, get off of YouTube or Vimeo or Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, or well, we're not on TikTok, but whatever future, metaverse, talking head thing is out there, go to john1911.com and hit us up. Because on john1911.com, we can do anything. I can send you direct links. I can post prices. I can email you directly. You can email me directly. It's our property. That's where we live. We can do whatever we want there. I'm just not advocating this, but I'm not discouraging it either. I don't know. Like, let's say we have some rare gun that we have a post on our website, and you own one of these rare guns, and you're like, I want to sell it. I mean, if you were to post a comment in our website and be like, hey, I'm selling a gun, as long as you're not a business, you're not a store, you're just a dude and, I mean, hell, or maybe it's a gun I would want to buy, post in the comments and someone will probably buy it from you. Hell, I may buy it from you. And we have no problem with that. I mean, it's because, it's you're a commenter on our website, you're a friend, you're in the club. We're not that we're lax, but we're more understanding and, more accommodating of our friends, right? Does that make sense? So, if you need something, you want something, hit us up on the website, kind of spread the word. And here's a perfect example. Most of you don't realize this, and this is actually connected to why john1911.com, we have a store, but it is a separate website, is almost every single social media outlet out there today has a rule in their terms of service that you cannot link to a website that sells firearms. And you'll occasionally even see, Mr. Guns and Gear, who he reposts a lot of stuff, or maybe certain manufacturers, they will have their social media limited or crippled or have problems because they're posting links to websites that actually sell guns. Well, John 1911 is a content website. The other website is a store that we sell coffee mugs on, but in the future there very likely will be controlled items on that store. So you can follow links, come to our website. If there's stuff, if you're in the comment section of the John 1911 website and you're like, hey, I need a solution for my gun problem, I can paste you. I'll be like, oh, check out these guys. Cut, paste, link, and it points right to some other website that has an FFL or sells guns, and you just click it and go. Whereas on these social media sites, I may give you a name, but I won't type out the web address, or I won't give you a hot link because, it's going to get deleted or shadow banned, or I'm going to get locked out, or you're going to get locked out. And the thing is, you post something like that on these social media websites, it may not come back to bite you 30, 60, 90. I mean, we had some stuff on Facebook. When Facebook, I have noticed, and I'm sure many of you have noticed, that since Facebook's gotten in trouble, Facebook's lost a lot of money. There's a lot of people turning on Facebook. A lot of people were calling for Facebook, because of their issues politically on the left and the right for the past few presidential cycles. I've noticed Facebook has gotten pretty lax with firearm content. They're not kicking it as hard as they used to. They used to kick it real hard. And the thing is, that's why we have John 1911. We saw this coming. And, we could do stuff now on Facebook, but, the pendulum will swing and they'll be blocking us out of stuff or deleting our posts. And when they cracked down on all this stuff before, we were getting flagged on content or posts or links that we had posted 3, 4, and 5 years ago. And I can't even find right now, if you were to ask me, hey, where's that thing you posted on Facebook in 2015? I'd be like, fuck, dude, I have no idea. I can't find that. Whereas, and that could come back to haunt us. I can't find it. I can't reference it. Something I posted 2015 on John 1911, search, comes right up. Oh, here's the thing. Here's a link. Here's comments. Right on topic. You can, was it necro posting? Isn't that what the forum guys call it? Yeah, I got no problem. You come into a post that's 10 years old on John 1911 and you have a question about something, boom, I'm going to see it and I'm going to come right in there and I'm going to answer it. So there's a lot of reasons why I, as an operator of this entity, would want you, the listener, the viewer, the patron, the follower, the fan, or the stalker, to get off of social media and get on our websites. So that's always been the goal, Get on our websites, get in our comment sections, sign up for the email list. That way there's not an entity between you and me. So that's all I got to say about that. Oh, wait, I'm a liar. There is one more thing I have to say about that. And the difference between dealing with people on social media versus dealing with people on John 19:11. So and this is the negative to large social media where there's a lot of reach. Like, for example, like Twitter. There's a lot of people on Twitter. If I were to post something on Twitter, we have stopped using our Twitter account years ago. And I need to tell that story one day. It's very interesting. There's more to it than just what I have told. I post something on Twitter, someone like, I don't know, Chris Christie or Paris Hilton or, I don't know, honestly, Donald Trump, they don't give two flying shits about the stuff that we do around here. But they have a chance of running into our content. And all that's going to do is just bring in a bunch of people that just want to come in and kind of shit on us, right? Or shit post or, cause issues. And the bigger the social media platform is, it gets to a point of diminishing returns and you start having people come in. So, like, for example, I was talking about the MAC-10 thing has come up lately, the Cobra MAC-10 guns. I've had 2 winners on social media on YouTube. And again, YouTube, I got to be careful. I don't ban people that don't need to be banned. But, you got people that they're really not down with the program. They're not really down with what we're trying to do over here, which is totally fine. But, they're coming in with their own agendas. And so the first one was the Cobra MAC-10 videos, because we'd rebuilt them. Quote, this is on YouTube. These guns always hit the innocent. I seen a guy dodge. This is also a run-on sentence. These guns always hit the innocent. I seen a guy dodge 32 shots from 20 feet away, but a little girl was shot playing on the next street over. And, I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, everyone gets if you post something, you get a response just to let you know that someone over here's seen it. And so, I just go, it's the shooter, not the gun. That's right. Decent comment. Like, I'm not, like, I think that's a pretty benign response, right? And he goes, listen to this. He goes, please post video of your dead aim accuracy instead of your opinion. And it's like, okay, all right. When the hell did I become the advocate for MAC-10 Cobra, bullshit, cheap-ass fucking subguns? Like, I mean, I'm not that guy. Like, why am I getting boxed into the corner here on this? It's like, these are shit guns. We've said these are shit guns, but now suddenly I have to take the other side of this. It's like, well, the real problem is, This is almost like a gun forum. And it's like, we find good people on social media, hopefully invite them to the website like the private club. But the price of admission is just clicking a link and be like, hey, come on in. You seem like a hello, fellow traveler. Come on in. But it's, you get the dirt bags and, you got to turn them away at the door. And this is obviously a guy, he's not really down with the program over here. He's just shit talking guns and shit talking for whatever he's trying to do. So the second one is, so then another guy comes in and he goes, MAC-10 never jams. And, I'm like, well, MAC-10s never jam like airplanes never fall out of the sky. And so then he comes in and he's like, well, we have one and it's never jammed. Or to quote, my family has one, it's never jammed. So he doesn't have it. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. And, it's like, it's having these opinions on guns that are kind of hyperbolic or just things that are in extremists all the time. And like social media has become about staking out positions in the extreme, and our policy is shooting guns and having fun. So anyway, that's all I got to say about that. Okay, in some world news that I thought was worth mentioning, some of it's because it's things that I'm interested in, and some of it I think it's worth. I think it's maybe you as an American, it's worth knowing. So the first thing is, again, as a child of the Cold War and knowing a little bit about the Russians and the former Soviet Union and their military. There is an air base in Russia called Engels 2, and it's named after the commie Engels guy, and it's a very important. You have to be careful the terms you use because Russians, I think they call it Air and Space Force is what they call themselves. They don't call them the Russian Air Force, and so it's a strategic nuclear bomber base, and it's in Western Russia, so it's not way out, in Siberia, and it's a very, 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 very important air base, where you would see strategic bombers even, deploy out of there, maybe up farther north into Russia, to come over the North Pole or do various things. It's an important base, and so. It had been publicly stated by, I guess, members of the Defense Department. I mean, whoever has access to satellite data. So it could be, it may not have been the Defense Department. It could have been, I'm sure Ukraine is buying satellite imagery from Maxar or Planet Labs or some of these places. And so, they got the money and they probably get it every, 24 hours. And they noticed a bunch of bombers kind of amassing at Engels 2. And, even the Western media reported on it like, hey, the Russians are getting ready to launch cruise missile attacks from bombers onto Ukraine to try to knock out all their power. You've seen these news stories. Winter's coming, the power's out. The Ukrainians have restored some power, but utilities are under attack in Ukraine. This is not the concept isn't new. It's as old as the U.S. Civil War, logistics. And the news this isn't out of the blue either because it was in the news. Well, last night, what I would call last night for me, it is reported that apparently somebody successfully attacked Engels 2. Now, it was just, because the range, it's not within striking range of any weapons, any ballistic missile weapons that Ukraine would have, and the West certainly didn't. The West certainly didn't launch anything after it. So it looks like that Ukrainians have gotten some kind of drone, and some little homemade drone is what's being reported, and they're able to fly this drone across the Russian border. Which how do I say this? Curtis LeMay and the old Strategic Air Command, if they could see how porous the Russian airspace is today, they would, oh my God, they would just be like, let's go do it. I mean, what to talk about a wet dream, and so they can fly. They apparently flew. The debate is whether did the Ukrainians fly this drone all the way to Engels 2, which is, it's not that far. I mean, it's 500 miles probably from Ukraine at most, I would guess, thinking on a map. So did they fly a drone, a kamikaze drone, or a drone that, dropped a missile or no, they're not real sure. And no one's really given the real story. And apparently something hit Engels 2 last night, damaged or destroyed. It probably will come out. I've seen video surveillance of the weapon going off, and it looked like something big is burning. So the report is 2 bombers were destroyed and were damaged. Probably end up being destroyed. You know how the Soviet Union always did. Leader Brezhnev is not sick. He's just he has a cold or he has a flu, and then he ends up dead. Bombers not damaged, they're just sick, and then they end up having a funeral for him. So, as a geopolitical world war type of thing, this is a big deal. I mean, this isn't a big deal as far as worrying about the exchange of nuclear weapons, which I think is becoming less and less likely. This is a big deal in the grand scheme of things. Cheap, low power, basically ghetto drones attacking, pretty serious infrastructure. I mean, we're the modern military for near peer adversary is really geared up to fight against large, expensive, fast, big, whatever things, not basically glorified DJI drones. And so the argument, like you would hear in the United States, the danger of these DJI drones, or the danger of, like what kind of data are these things passing back, or maybe, if you could get 500 DJI drones to suddenly just go after an airplane taking off out of Dulles, you going, getting sucked into the engines, it could bring that plane down. Like these are the kind of things that people with deep in the deepest bowels of U.S. government worry about, and this is in that territory. So I don't know what kind of drone this was. I don't know if it carried a weapon, if it just was a weapon, but it hit Ingalls too, and that's pretty embarrassing. On the same day, apparently, that Vladimir Putin was driving across the bridge in the Kerch Straits over the Sea of Azov, which is the little bridge. It's not little; it's a long ass bridge between Crimea and Russia proper that the Ukrainians, have been shooting at and blowing up and hitting with stuff. So it's just interesting. Along those lines, the United States yesterday revealed, or not, was it Friday? Friday revealed the new stealth bomber. In the same way that they revealed the original B-2 bomber, instead of the B-2, this is the B-21 Raider, or it's realistically probably the B-2.1 stealth bomber. Very interesting aircraft. It is being procured on. So you got the B-2 bomber was supposed to be, I think, 100 bombers, and eventually got knocked down to 20 or 21 units. And there's been at least one mishap, as I recall, and there's less than 20 of them. There's 19, maybe 19, 18 of these bombers left. There's been one loss and some damages. Then you got to have a training platform and cycle them in and out. And these bombers were sold at $2 billion a piece. Was it $1 billion a piece? Anyway, so the B-21, when it was contract was signed, 2010, maybe 2010, maybe it's like $500 million per unit, and so it's being delivered as $500 million. I mean, it's inflation, so $700 million. They're being delivered, and right now the Air Force is saying they plan on picking up 100 of these. Realistically, number one, they absolutely need to get 100 of them. Realistically, they need about 150 of them, because they're going to need more than what they need. There'll be some that are lost, and there'll be test beds and training units, and hey, we're going to stick new stuff on this airplane, so it's like their test bed plane or something. Like there's going to be there needs to be more than 100, I think. And I think there's a good chance that we're going to do that. And I think the argument for the B-21, which I am very, very, very super excited about, and I think you should be too, is, we don't have a 12 carrier Navy, and, we're trying to cost our way out of, some of the problems. We're retiring a lot of cruisers, the Ticonderoga class cruisers. Some of them were retiring early. A lot of them are in really bad shape, because they're just totally aging out, and we're getting less and less vertical. If you look at fighting in the Pacific, and you measure vertical launch cells, like those are your real guns today, like your vertical missile launchers. You have how many vertical missile launchers versus your adversary, and how many vertical missile launchers they have. And so we're starting to see a gap there. Well, there's ways to address that, and a couple of different ways would be with a long-range standoff cruise missiles, P3 or P3 successor, the P8. I think the P8 anti-sub aircraft is a real boon to the U.S. Navy and to force projection in the Pacific, because the war in you can historically say the first period of naval warfare would be large surface combatants, and then that peaked with battleships until Billy Mitchell kind of, knocked that shit out of the water, literally. And then you went to the Billy Mitchell area, which was aircraft carriers. And I think it's fair to say that going forward, the next war in the Pacific, the big major near-peer war, it's going to be a submarine war. And, a submarine war does not really, and vertical missile, vertical launchers that can do a lot of damage and shoot long distances. Carrier strike groups, I don't know. It depends. Like, you could go either way on that one. But, the idea, not only would the B-2 or the B-21 also be, a strategic bomber for the Air Force, and, doing all the things that it wants to do, even do some reconnaissance they're talking about, but, a stealth aircraft that can sneak around and fire long-range anti-ship missiles, that these dudes can't see coming until it's too late. I mean, for $500 million, $500 million per platform, and we could have 100 of them. I mean, that's a game changer. Like, that really is. And it's pretty exciting. And also, something that you should consider too, when we first had stealth aircraft, it was such a state secret that, when the F-17, the Russians knew something about the F-117 before we knew about it publicly. And records have shown historically that, the Russians were aware that there was something going on, but they really weren't quite sure exactly what it was for a while. And the F-117 was designed to go in behind enemy lines in the opening hours of conflict with the Soviet Union, especially in Europe, and to attack missile batteries, to attack logistics points, and to attack, and principally also to attack airborne early warning aircraft. And so they could get in air, and so it could give the Air Force more running room to dominate the battlefield over Russian ground forces. And so it was a super secret thing. And, the Cold War came to an end. Also, the Russians started to be aware of it. The F-117 really didn't break its chops until the first Gulf War. Then the B-2 was, revealed. And we're to the point now that, the Russians are developing stealth technology. It doesn't seem to be working out too well for them. The Chinese have their H-20, which is a stealth, long-range stealth bomber, and it's a big deal. Like, don't kid yourself on that one. If it works the way it's supposed to work, I mean, it could hit Hawaii. It could easily attack Guam, but it could even reach Hawaii. I hope we can, we can find it, detect it, and kill it. Especially if it was to be used as like a sneak attack, the way basically we would use the B-2 and B-21, right? Well, if you realize now that stealth technology is kind of proliferating around the world, you look around at the allies of the United States. Okay, UK has nuclear weapons and nuclear submarines, but all these other allies, the United States, they don't have UK has nukes. UK has nukes. Israel has nukes, not officially, but you see what I'm saying. So if you look at your allies in the United States, like we have China, or China's breathing down everybody's neck in the Western Pacific, and Japan has a huge navy. Talking about those VLS launchers, right? And when you add up our VLS launchers with the Japanese VLS launchers, those numbers start to look real good. Like it's not really just us. The Japs are in in a good way, right? Your buddies. The Japanese are in it to win it just as well, and we're glad to see that. Well, Australia is all the way down there with a very, very small population, very small military, and Australia doesn't even have the ability to really defend its coastline that well. And I know I have Australians that listen to this podcast, and I don't mean this the way it just came out, but you know what I'm saying. Your military is not a power projection military. You can get to Timor. We get it. But like your subs are all over on the West Coast. You got nothing on the East Coast. This is why you want nuclear submarines, so you can do long-range combat patrols and you can roam the Pacific and push out your enemy farther from your coastline so you can be more proactive in defending yourself. And I'm saying that to you in Australia to say this to my friends in America. There's a real good chance if Australia is going to get nuclear weapons, nuclear submarine technology, and the secrets that all is involved in that, which are way, way, way above and beyond the secrets of the stealth aircraft. An argument can be made that countries like Australia, maybe UK. I don't know. You make an argument maybe for Israel, but definitely Australia and the UK. They don't have a bomber. They don't have a bomber force. They don't have a bomber fleet. They don't have a bomber doctrine. They don't have the ability. I don't remember the last time Australia ever had a bomber. I'm sure they had some left over from the British Empire, or from the Brits. And the Brits shut down their bomber force, I think, pretty much after the Falklands War. Like, they don't have any bombers. And this is a B-21 mass-produced aircraft. It's mature technology. It's not $2 billion. It's not the most secret thing in the world. I'm sure it's got a lot of upgrades over the B-2, and I hope it's better than the H-20 that the Chinese have. But just like the F-35, you can make an argument that you might see foreign military sales of the B-21, and you might see foreign military sales of this type of technology to help the United States, be on the same team. Because the reality is, unless something significantly changes in China, war is coming to the Pacific, and everyone can see this. I mean, people saw World War II coming 15, 20 years before it happened. And you can always change the future. It's not set in stone, but it's right. Everyone knows war's coming, and it maybe it won't even come in my lifetime. I'm 51, but it's coming, and decisions have to be made now for our allies to really start stepping up. It can't just be the U.S. carrying it alone. And so you see things like, it's inspiring to see Ukraine fight against Russia. It's inspiring to see that, that small country really take it to them. And you also start asking yourself, a lot of these commie countries, how much of their shit doesn't work? You look at you remember when Donald Trump was president, and he was bitching back and forth with Little Kim, Rocket Man, as he called him, in North Korea, and he'd fire off weapons and do things, and Trump would get all pissed off and, say stuff to him. And at one point, Trump made a very good point. He made a very good statement. It was on Twitter, and everyone's hooting and hollering, all mad, partisan-wise in the U.S., but it was a true statement, and I think it was effective. And Trump said, "I have a big, beautiful red button on my desk, and it works." And you got to wonder how much of this stuff, this Russian doctrine, this commie equipment, this, the Chinese have, that they subscribe to, the Russians, a lot of it doesn't seem to be working that well. And then when you look at, how inspirational the Ukrainians have been, it's time for the world to start stepping up here. And, America can't be the world's police force, right? They don't want America to be the world's police force. Well, Japan's building a navy. They're basically building aircraft carriers. Australia wants nuclear attack submarines. I think there's an argument. Everyone's buying these stealth F-35s, which are turning out to be dynamite aircraft. I'm waiting to see what happens with these B-21s. I think you're going to see more and more and more of those come out. And along these lines, in world news that I thought was interesting and worth mentioning, it's not getting covered in the U.S. at all. There's a Air Force base in the Indian Ocean called Diego Garcia, and it's actually not it's not U.S. territory. It's actually administered by the Brits, United Kingdom. It's a British overseas territory, and it's not really clear to me exactly how it all works, but some of the islands down there, Diego Garcia being the biggest one, I guess the UK had purchased this from, I can't remember what the country, I can't remember what it is. the country escapes me, but this particular country, it's off the coast of, it's off the east coast of Africa. They're getting closer and closer to the Chinese, and it looks like the Brits may be about to give Diego Garcia, basically give these islands that are around Diego Garcia back to this other country. And, well, this other country happens to be, I wish I could remember what it was, happens to be getting closer and closer to China. And the fear is, well, fuck me running. How long until the Chinese just set up a big old naval base literally within striking distance of Diego Garcia? I mean, it's a huge issue and it needs to be addressed. And, as Donald Trump talked about buying Greenland, we need to talk about buying some of this shit down there and settling this. I mean, we have to write a big ass check and make everybody happy and just make that U.S. territory, because we need that base. That base is superbly important. It's important for power projection of aircraft like the B-2 and the B-52. Power projection into Asia, Southwest Asia, into Southeast Asia, and in the Pacific. And we need that base. And we don't want the Chinese on top of that base. Because as I said, everyone can predict the future. War is coming. On the political front, I'm not going to go into too much here. There's been a lot going on. I'm just going to say this. I'm aware of the, quote, Twitter files, unquote, that came out of, that Elon Musk had released, I guess, coordination or collusion. Is that a word? It seems vaguely familiar. Collusion between the DNC and Twitter as far as, projecting a certain message, which seems interesting. And, is that illegal? No, it's not. Twitter is publicly traded, but Twitter is a private entity, and the DNC is not a government agency. You could make an argument that certain members, maybe are, or sitting members of government, but, is anything going to come of this criminally? No, but there's going to be a ton of hearings and, grandstanding, and, the mainstream media is going to ignore it completely. But I thought what was interesting is, I doubt many of you, you've heard of this guy's name now. His name's Matt Taibbi. And Matt Taibbi, I'm familiar with Matt Taibbi. He's a lib, dude. He's a classic liberal. He is not a Republican. He is not a conservative. I would doubt he's a Trump fan. I would bet money he's not. There's no way he's a Trump fan. No way. Even a Romney fan. He is not a conservative. It's just super interesting to see Matt Taibbi all of a sudden in the crosshairs of the mainstream media. And, it reminds me of the Cultural Revolution, or the stories you hear from the Cultural Revolution. These people where they come at you in mobs and make you kowtow and, beat you and strip everything from you. The reality is, you be a good communist, a member of the party, and all of a sudden, just for political reasons, they got to get rid of you too. And the little dudes show up with the little red books, and they start beating you and put you in a gulag for 20 years until you can, quote, get rehabilitated. Well, they're coming after Matt Taibbi. And again, Matt Taibbi is not a conservative. And I just think that's really interesting. And what's even more interesting, and this could go somewhere. It appears Nicholas Sandmann, who was the kid from Covington Catholic who was accused of doing something against the Native American who got in his face. And then Kyle Rittenhouse, who most people listening to this podcast know who that is. He was involved in the self-defense shooting in the riots in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Apparently, both Nicholas Sandmann and Kyle Rittenhouse have asked Elon Musk to release files, anything you can find about coordination between Twitter and stories about them. That is super interesting. There could be an argument made by counsel of, slander could you make a malice argument? They're not public figures. I'll tell you what, the answer to that question of malice for Sandmann and Rittenhouse would be in the communications found in Twitter. But who do you sue? And if you sue and you win a judgment, who pays the judgment? you can't sue Elon Musk. The entity that existed when this happened no longer exists. Twitter, you may think Twitter is the same thing and the app is the same thing on your phone and has the same domain name, but it is a different company. It is not the same company. It's a different entity. I think it is legally. I don't know. Maybe there's an argument that it's not. But, so now does Elon Musk, he's got to figure out, is my company going to get sued by Salmon or Rittenhouse for shit people did? Well, if he does, you're hearing it here first. I just thought about this. I wonder if an argument can be made for a clawback because, I have been involved in the sale of businesses and the purchase of businesses. And there are always provisions in these sales. Again, I haven't seen Elon Musk's sales agreement. It's notoriously airtight, apparently, or he would have gotten out of it, maybe. But I wonder if there would be provisions for clawbacks here, and like how would that work, or who would it go against? Would it be members of the board, senior? I don't know. You have to see what kind of class of stock they had. I don't know. Like it's an interesting argument, and you'll probably hear more about that, especially if it turns out that there is something to say on Sandman and Rittenhouse as far as a slander argument is concerned, and if it is true, who pays? Okay, something a little bit more interesting and fun. The hunting section of the podcast, hunting stories, and I'm going to put this under the hunting headline because it's my podcast and I do what I want, right? Out of Decatur, Georgia, there's a story of a sheepdog that got into a fight with a dozen coyotes and killed 8 of them, protecting a flock of sheep and goats. And I saw a picture of the dog, and I'm like, I ain't no goddamn sheepdog like my grandpa had. So I looked it up, and apparently the dog is named Casper. He is 20 months old, and he is a Great Pyrenees. I know what the Pyrenees Mountains are, but I don't know what it looks like almost a Saint Bernard looking kind of dog. I mean, it's a big dog. It's not like a collie or something. It's a big dog, and hey, he killed 8 coyotes. This dog's prepared to throw down. This dog's like Mike Tyson. This is not a flyweight boxer. Okay, this is heavyweight. And so, what's interesting is the story, the way it's being written. Fights more than a dozen coyotes, kills 8 trying to attack herds of sheep and goats. Apparently, the dog was grievously injured, disappeared for a couple of days, and came back. And they, the owner put up a GoFundMe to raise for medical bills. It was $15,000. They apparently did raise the money, and the dog is still under, I guess, tentative medical care. The dog, I believe, is home, but, has to go back and see the doctors and whatever. So I'm telling you that story to tell you this story, because apparently the John 1911 range has a problem. It's a large property with woods and fields and adjacent farms and woods and fields and what, some people that live in a city might call the wilderness. And when you're out there at night and the coyotes run something down, or, if they're hungry and you hear them out there, I have heard at least a pack of 10 in front of me at the back of the John 1911 range tearing something apart. And I have heard another group of, I don't know how many, could have been 5, 8, 9, 10, behind me at a neighboring farm. It's at night, so you can hear, the sound travels. It's a cold night. And I don't know if they're talking to each other, they're running something else down, but you realize you're surrounded. Like there could be 20 coyotes around here, okay? It's like, hey, note to self, it's on the long-term to-do list of the John 1911 range that we're going to be going back there knocking some coyotes down, not even out of the principle of like, hey, it's going to make a difference, because there is a debate on shooting coyotes doesn't really affect the population or maybe just causes it to grow. But I think out of principle, I think the coyotes need to understand, because they get a lot of run room on the John 1911 range, because we're not a functioning farm. So when we're not there operating, they can do whatever fuck they want. And so I think occasionally it would be good to kick them in the nuts and remind them of who's the apex predator on this property, and it ain't the coyotes, it is Marky. Okay, so I'm telling you all that to tell you this. In response to the Decatur, Georgia story with Casper, the sheepdog, who's a Pyrenees dog, apparently tearing all these coyotes up, which is amazing. The local media down there contacts something called the Atlanta, outside of Georgia, the Atlanta Coyote Project, quote, which monitors the movements of animals in the area, say that while it is common to spot coyotes wandering around, it is rare to see so many running together as a pack. Quote, this is extremely unusual behavior for coyotes, and we suspect that there might be extenuating circumstances, said Chris Mowry, a professor of biology at Berry College. I don't know who of you listening to this podcast is going to Berry College, but y'all need a refund. I mean, this it's like coyotes running in big packs. You're crazy. I mean, like this is not usual. This isn't normal. It's like, what is this drivel bullshit? And I'm gonna get off of that to say this. Okay, let's just say 8 coyotes. All right, coyotes can't attack people. One of them gets hungry or sick. Will attack small people. Like, they get desperate, right? Like, anything can get desperate. You don't need an AR-15, right? A hunter. You don't need an AR-15. I don't know, dude. I mean, if 8 or 12 or 20 coyotes come at me, I need a goddamn AR-15, and it is going to be a full-on hoedown. And, I mean, 20 coyotes come after you, you're going to get some of them, but at some point, you're going to be in a scrum. You're going to be in a fur ball with these animals, and you're going to be shooting and punching and rolling and shooting, and I don't want no goddamn lever gun, And it's like, I just read this from Chris Mowry from Berry College, and I'm just like, you people need to do whatever you can to somehow convince the suburban soccer moms that everything's okay out there in the woods. There is a reason why our ancestors and our forefathers ran down and shot all these big ass predators, and we're letting them come back, and that's great. I mean, we need a balanced ecosystem, but the more you balance these ecosystems out, the more it helps that, you're out there with your family in the woods and you got a gun with more than 6 shots in it and a reload, because, I got news for you. Unless we have radioactive coyote invasions on the John 1911 range, coyotes travel in packs, Bubba. And 8 coyotes or 10 coyotes in one group, that is not a big deal. Two more stories out of what I would call the hunting/farming section of the podcast. There's a story out of Montana of a gentleman. His name's Will Winkins, and he lives in Ravalli. It's Ravalli County, Montana. I'm not familiar with Ravalli County. And basically the long story short is Will owns like about 9 acres, and he bought this property, some years ago, and he lives out. He's kind of an outdoors enthusiast. Like, he's like a primitives guy. Like, he tans his own hides and probably makes fires with sticks, and does all that kind of stuff, like the things you may see at Friendship, Indiana, for the black powder national shoots and that kind of stuff. So I mean, you kind of get where the guy's coming from. And he apparently moved there from West Virginia, and he lives out there in Montana, and it's this thing. And he bought this property, and there was an easement through his property. It's only like 9 acres, and there's an easement through his property to the federal government, the U.S. Forest Service. And the easement documents say that they put in a little road in. And again, this Will Winkins didn't put this easement in there. He inherited this easement when he bought the property. He was made aware of the easement when he bought the property because it was in the disclosure documents, and it could have affected, his price, the asking price, and the buying price. And the easement specifically says for the U.S. Forest Service, because this man's property backs up against a national park of some kind, which is, it's Montana. It's not that hard to figure out. And it is a logging road, and an access road in the event that there's a fire. And so, once in a while, like they may want to come in and bring their trucks in and log some areas of the back part of this large national forest property because, they want to manage the property. And so they got an easement through this guy's property and the previous owner had given it to him. And it's like, well, if it's just for logging and for emergency access, I mean, he's got to allow the easement. He can't block the easement. He can't, it's got to maintain it, but it's just an easement for administrative use for the U.S. Forest Service. He's like, okay, it's not that bad. I mean, how often does someone come in and log a property? I mean, it really doesn't, you see what I'm saying? Well, apparently, the U.S. Forest Service has decided on their own, without any authority, this easement is now being used as a public entrance to this national park because it's a hard back part of the property to get to. They don't have any roads going back there. So they have this easement and they're literally now advertising it as an entrance for people to come through this easement, which also happens to go through this man's 9-acre property. Now, mind you, this guy doesn't have like 400 acres. Like you go out there to Montana and I'm trying to remember how it works, but because I've hunted out there a little bit in Montana, and because it's kind of arid and dry, like what they call them, sets. Was it a set or we'll have we will say here east of the Mississippi, this farm is 125 acres, so much is tillable. This farm is 247 acres, 87 of it's tillable or to be wooded or whatever. Well, and there's a number that you kind of have for farms because we have enough rain here that there enough grass grows or, stuff grows so animals can graze. Well, out west, it's so arid that when you buy a ranch out there in Montana, it'll be, I think it's called set. Whatever the unit of measurement it is, it's like 640 acres. So like you'll be talking to a rancher and he's like, I've got if it's set, he's like, I got 10 sets and then I got access to another 1,500 acres that we lease or something. And you realize like these properties are huge. They are huge. And they have to be because you need more, so much land per square foot because of the amount of grass that grows to keep X amount of cattle alive, right? And so out there, you need a lot more land to keep the same amount of cattle alive as you do here east of the Mississippi. Well, I'm saying all that to remind you of this. Mr. Wilkins in Ravalli County, he only has 9 acres. I mean, he's not sitting on 640 acres. He's got 9 acres. And this thing comes right through his property. And now he's got civilians coming through at all hours. Now they're parking on the entrance. He's had people steal stuff off his property. He's had people steal stuff off his porch. He's had someone shot, I believe, one of his dogs and killed his dog. Someone else apparently shot and wounded a cat on his property. This is from people coming in this easement. And so he approached the Forest Service and is like, hey, what the fuck? This is an administrative easement for the Forest Service to come in and admin the back of their property. This isn't supposed to be a public access entrance. And the Forest Service told him, like, well, you could sue us. And that's what he's doing. And so Will Wilkins, a guy that wants to be left alone with his buckskins and his fire starter sticks and his little 9 acres, is having to sue the federal government, the U.S. Forest Service, to stop trashing his property because somebody so many years ago gave a let's be nice easement to the federal government. And here we are 50, 60, 70 years later, and he's getting fucked. I wish you good luck, Mr. Wilkins. If anyone can find a way to maybe give this guy some money, a GoFundMe or something legit, send it to me privately, and I wouldn't mind putting it up on the website. And along those lines, there's a story out of the Netherlands, and it's in the Netherlands, so it doesn't really affect us. But what happens over there can happen here, and so I've talked about the war in Ukraine. We're all aware of what's been going on. The food shortages, the supply chain shortages, all the different problems, right? then you have droughts and whatever. And so, there is a fear in certain parts of the world of, you even hear the hippies or the commies, they will use this issue to try to drive their agendas, like food insecurity. Like, we have to do something commie because of, quote, food insecurity. All right. So I told you that to tell you this. In the Netherlands, somebody who is known as the nitrogen minister has decided that 3,000 farms in the Netherlands are producing too much nitrogen gas, I guess, cow farts. And so what are they doing? They are forcibly telling 3,000 farms that they're going to buy them out. They're basically like, your farm is worth X. We're giving you the money. We're taking the property and we're shutting your farm down. And, there's been a lot of protest, guys with tractors blocking roads, doing all this other kind of stuff. And it's gotten a fair amount of news in Europe. I don't think this has gotten a hill of beans worth of news here in the United States. But all I can think of is my grandfather. And my grandfather, family farm, and his two brothers, they're on the family farm, and it was their farms that they had inherited from their father. And the farm had gone back. We have graves on the farm going back to the 1700s. And the idea that the government would come in and take my family's farm, I mean, I'm a pretty nice guy, and I don't want to sound like this really angry guy on the internet, because I'm not. But it's like, that's not happening. I mean, my family, and I'm speaking this dispassionately and objectively, they would take a backhoe, and my grandfather would go over, he would get a backhoe. He's since passed. He died in 91. Farming life is good for you, right? He would take a backhoe, would have taken a backhoe, and dug his own grave and ordered his own headstone and laid a pine box out there and said, when it's over, you know where to bury me. And he'd have killed every one of these motherfuckers until they killed him to take his farm. There is no way. And I want you to think about that. If you live in the United States and you're listening to this podcast, or, you live in Australia, you certainly know all the stuff you've been through with your government and the COVID lockdowns. I mean, you think it was bad here in the U.S., you should see what was going on down there in Australia. It was insane. And, in America, we have two things. Well, we have multiple things. We have the Constitution and we have the Bill of Rights. And, we have the First Amendment, which is very, very, very important, because I could say something like, you ain't taking my fucking farm. You're not taking my grandfather's farm. And you can't put me in jail for saying that, whereas maybe in the UK or the Netherlands, certainly in the UK, I think they put you in jail for it. And, also, we have the Second Amendment, and, it's kind of a pressure release valve. Like, the governed only allow them to be governed through consent. And the pressure release valve is the Second Amendment. Like, if it's really worth it to you to come here and do some crazy stuff that none of us actually agree with, all right, come on. And, I feel really bad for the people in the Netherlands. I can't tell you what to do if you're in the Netherlands. I'm not Dutch. I don't live in the Netherlands. I don't know what your culture's like. I don't know what your gun laws are like. I don't know what your opinions are of your federal government versus its rights relative to citizens are. I don't even know how you stand relative to the other citizens in your country. Like, I don't know, is the rest of the Netherlands, do they want to see you crushed like a bug, or are they like, run them out? Are you the minority that needs to be destroyed? Are you the new people to be prejudiced against? Because now they're going after the farmers. Right when, we're talking about food insecurity, because that's how smart they are in Europe, geniuses. So I wish I had something. To say that was enlightening or inspiring for the people in the Netherlands. If that was me, I'd make the papers. Okay, enough of that. Those awful subjects, right? Let's talk about some pop culture and the police blotter, and we'll go ahead and get out of here. So, in the pop culture section of the podcast, I thought it was worth mentioning. I'm a person of a certain age, 51, and I never wanted to go to the Playboy Mansion, but I certainly was aware of what the Playboy Mansion was, and I have a different outlook on it now. Now that I'm older than maybe I might have had when I was younger. Like if I was a young man, I'd be like, "Oh, there's a party at the Playboy Mansion." There's gonna be like Playboy playmates there. Like that would be like, oh, really? We're now as an older person. I would say to myself, well, no matter what you do, don't get in the grotto water because you're gonna catch something you can't wash off. And the Playboy Mansion was sold after Hugh Hefner's death. Hugh Hefner had signed a deal to sell the property, but he could reside there like a reverse mortgage, reside there until his passing. And so the new owner has been working on the property for a couple of years. I think some billionaire. I can't remember what he owns. It's something we've all heard of. He's a younger man. And he's been doing all kinds of stuff, putting in garages and sauna, or, just like, making it his house. Apparently he's a car guy. But one of the things I thought was interesting was the grotto is gone. So he apparently, even though he's a younger man, he decided like I do. He didn't, you couldn't pour enough bleach down that thing. That's just, oh my God. Like just the old, just imagine the Playboy Mansion grotto, not even being used, but, just letting it fester. Like, I don't know what happened out there in the last few years of Hugh Hefner's life, but, the next outbreak could have started, in that freaking thing. I'm just saying, like, it may, maybe the next time the bat drank some grotto water and that caused the new virus that spread around the world. So anyway, we'll post some pictures of what he's done to the Playboy Mansion, and I thought it was really interesting. Okay, now it's time for the police blotter, and we're going to go ahead and get out of it. So the first story is out of New Orleans, and this is an example of young, stupid children of pseudo-famous people or relatives of famous people behaving poorly. It is being reported that Chris Christie, the former governor of New Jersey and buddy of Donald Trump, his niece, 25 years of age, on Thanksgiving morning, was harassing, it's a woman, was harassing some Hispanic people on an aircraft, accusing them of being cocaine drug mules, I believe is the way the media reported it, and generally just being a pain in the ass. I don't know if she was drunk or not, but probably. And she was asked to deplane, and she had a fit, and I think was refusing. I think they got her into the jetway somehow, and it is being reported that 6 deputies suffered various forms of injury, including being bit and kicked in the groin. She is, and apparently she was screaming, "You're all going to lose your jobs when you find out who my family is." And it's like, oh, baby girl. Ooh, you young and dumb. Yeah, you should shut the fuck up. Oh, my God. Yeah, so there's a good chance that she may have put the final nail into Chris Christie's coffin, politically speaking, that is. I don't have anything against Chris Christie. He seems like a perfectly nice man, and I agree with him on some stuff, but he's not pro-gun, and I don't want him anywhere near the GOP nomination. Never did. So, he can go be secretary of something for somebody else, but yeah, hopefully, his entitled little family is circling the wagons to take care of Shannon Epstein, his 25-year-old niece. Another story out of the Osceola County Sheriff's Office. This was sent to us, and thank you for sending this to me. This is about a gentleman in St. Cloud, Florida, and he was arrested. So the police were having a shop with a cop day, and there were 40 law enforcement officers in a Walmart. And of course it's a Walmart, right? Post office, Walmart, or McDonald's. And it always is. Post office, Walmart, or McDonald's. It's my theory. And 40 of them were in there, and this guy goes in there and decides, today is the day I'm going to shoplift from Walmart. And so, as it is reported, Sheriff's Office says a man they refer to as Brad was arrested at a St. Cloud Walmart after trying to steal items. At the same time, about 40 deputies were inside as part of a Shop with a Cop event, WTTV reported. Quote, seriously, We just can't make this up, unquote. The department posted on Facebook, quote, Brad decided to steal from our good neighbors and partners at Walmart in St. Cloud while we were conducting the Shop with a Cop event with the children of our community. Bad news, Brad. So, yeah, it's like, if criminals were smart, it would make life a lot harder on everybody. And so the final story on the police blotter, unfortunately, does involve law enforcement, but I wanted to include it because it never hurts to at least remind everybody a little public service announcements that guns are dangerous and you don't point guns at things you don't want to destroy. Palm Bay, Florida, a Florida deputy, 23, was shot dead by his police officer roommate who, quote, jokingly pointed a gun at him. Apparently they were roommates and they were young police officers, and they apparently were well known to the local law enforcement community, had worked with like the local, their little junior officer programs and wanted to be police officers, I think with the sheriff's office, and were apparently both well known to the actual sheriff down there. And they were playing video game. They were playing video games for a while, guys playing video games. And one of them pointed a gun at the other one, jokingly thought the gun was empty and pulled the trigger. And the joke's on him because it wasn't empty, because it's never empty. Guns are never unloaded, right? So just keep that in mind. If it can happen to cops, it can happen to you. Well, this wraps up episode 281 of the John 1911 podcast. If you want to see any more stories or pictures or links, please go to our website at john1911.com. You can also give us feedback at podcast@john1911.com. That's JOHN1911.com. Remember, it's all about shooting guns and having fun. Everybody, have a good day.